Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're not getting too bored, and if you are getting bored, don't be like Judah and tell your mom that you're bored, because then you'll probably get chores. Anyway, some announcements as we begin today. Urban Hope is still scheduled for May 1st through the 3rd. As of now, that event is still happening. You can still sign up online. Remember, we're not paying anything online, so in the event that our Urban Hope trip would get canceled and you already registered, it's not a big deal. Or if you already registered and decided at a later point not to go, that's not a big deal as well. So if you think you're going to go to Urban Hope, go ahead and get registered for that. Also coming up is Momentum. They're still planning to do that this summer. So you can go online and get registered for that. Pay your $75 deposit to lock in the lowest rate for Momentum. And they have told us with Momentum that if they were to cancel, that they would give a refund minus a few dollars for a processing fee. So you can pay your deposit, and then in the event that would get canceled, you get that money back. But be continuing to pray that this coronavirus thing passes before the summer, and we can do camp and Momentum, and hopefully even Urban Hope in May. Anyway, on to our lesson for today. We're just going to go on with Ephesians. For now, we might as well finish up our last couple weeks of that and try and preserve some type of normalcy. And so we're in Ephesians 5, and we're in the second half of Ephesians 5. And if you read or looked at that at all, you know that the main focus of that passage is husbands and wives. And so some of you may be thinking, why are we going to talk about husbands and wives? That doesn't apply to me right now. If you're one of the junior high boys, you may be thinking that might not apply to me ever. I'm just kidding. If you want to get married, God will probably work it out for you to get married. You'll find some girl that likes nerds. Anyway, this probably doesn't apply to you right now in the stage of life that you're in, but it's still a good thing to be thinking about. What does it really look like to be a godly wife or a godly husband? Because someday you likely will be married, and what you start to prepare now will have a big effect on who you are when you get to that point. And preparing well now could help you to have a great marriage later. Another thing with this passage, and I'm going to talk about husbands and wives a little bit, but the bigger thing I want to focus on in this passage is just leadership in general. There's a lot we can learn from this passage on just what is a biblical leader. What does that look like? And biblical leadership is something that we really, really need. We need it in our church. We need it in our community. We need it in our world. Whether it's in the middle of a crisis like we're in now, or just in normal everyday life, we need you guys to step up and to be leaders. Be a leader in the youth group right now. Be a leader in the church. Be a leader in your future church and in your future workplace and in your community. We need people who are going to be biblical leaders. As I look around, whether it's now in this crisis or even before this crisis, there's not a lot of leaders. There's a lot of followers, a lot of people who are just willing to do their thing and maybe pitch in here and there, but not a lot of people are willing to step up and be a leader and take responsibility. And we need people who can do that, people who will do that, who will step up and take on that challenge. And as I look around, there are a lot of people, even in leadership, who aren't good biblical leaders. People who are just in leadership for themselves, just in it to get a position, to have something good to put on their college resume, just in leadership to get some power or maybe some more money. And we don't really need that type of leader. We need biblical leaders who are going to love and care for the people God has given them to lead. And so there's a lot just in this section that we can even learn about just being a biblical leader. So go ahead with me and look at, sorry, my screen turned off. Go ahead with me and look at Ephesians 5, and we're going to start in verse 21. Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so the first thing we see here is just a general statement to all of us. This isn't husbands and wives yet. This is just a statement, a challenge to all of us, whether we're men or women, whether we're young or old. The challenge is for us to submit to one another. And what does that mean? Does that mean we just have to do whatever anybody asks us to do? There was a movie a couple years ago called Yes Man. It's not a real great movie. I wouldn't necessarily recommend watching it. But the premise of the movie was that this guy takes up this challenge that anytime anybody asks him to do anything, he's going to say yes. And he ends up doing a bunch of crazy and stupid stuff because he keeps saying yes to everything. Is that what Paul means for us to submit to one another? Just let everybody else dictate what we're going to do. And that's not the point here. The point isn't that everybody else gets to tell us what to do. We still get to make our own decisions, choose what we're going to do. But the challenge for us is in making our decisions, are we considering how they affect other people? And considering other people's benefit or harm from our decision, and are we making the decisions that don't just benefit us, but actually help the people around us? And one thing I want you to realize and think about is every decision that you make affects somebody else. Sometimes that's obvious. If we get COVID-19 and then go over to our buddy's house and cough all over him, that's going to have a definite effect on him. That's pretty obvious. Sometimes the effect is less obvious. If you choose to spend all afternoon playing Fortnite, you might think, that only affects me, that only involves me. But you could have, instead of playing Fortnite all afternoon, spent a half hour or an hour doing some chores around the house. And then that's a half hour or hour less that your mom or dad would have to do chores. And they could maybe spend that time doing something that they enjoy. And then at the end of the day, they would maybe feel a little rested and relaxed instead of being tired and worn out and angry at you. Right? Even those small decisions we think just affect us actually affect people around us. And if we want to be godly men and women, and especially if we want to be leaders, we got to consider other people and how our decisions affect them, and try to make decisions that aren't just for our benefit, but actually benefit the other people around us. That we submit sometimes our will and our desire and what would be best just for us to do what's best for other people around us. And so that's where leadership starts, submitting to one another, being more considerate of other people and our effect on them in their life. And then as we go on in this passage, Paul does dig in specifically into wives and husbands. And he starts off with the wife in verse 22. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. And so Paul first of all says to wives, submit to your husband. And what I want us to understand first is that this doesn't mean that wives are slaves to their husband. Just like when we talk about everybody submitting to each other, it doesn't mean that we just let everybody else tell us what to do. Wives submitting to their husbands doesn't mean that the wife just has to be a slave and do whatever her husband says. Bake him a pie, get him a sandwich, whatever he says. Wives still have freedom, still make choices, still have some power and influence in the marriage relationship. But what this means is that a wife is, first of all, to consider the good of her husband and family above her own good. It means that a wife is to be a partner working with her husband as her husband leads the family closer to Jesus. She's partnering with her husband, trying to support him, trying to help him so that they're both guiding their family closer to Jesus. Right? It's not about slavery, it's about partnership and working together. And so my challenge for you ladies in this time in your life right now, as you're not married yet, is to think about, as you're out there, not out there right now, whenever the quarantine is over and you're out there and you're talking to guys, you're meeting guys on Tinder. No, hopefully you're not meeting guys on Tinder. That's bad. But wherever you're meeting some guys and getting to know guys and maybe pursuing relationships, be looking for godly men. Be looking for a guy who you can marry, who's going to be a biblical leader. And if you're doing that, that's going to make this passage a whole lot easier. You're going to be able to submit and you're going to be able to partner with that man because he is leading you and your family toward Christ. He's leading you in a direction you want to go. And so it's going to be easy to submit and partner with him. Not necessarily easy, but easier. Right? Marriage is always going to be hard, but with a godly man, it's going to make it easier for you. And so be thinking about that as you're talking to guys and as you're building relationships even now, even if you're not planning to be married for years and years. Those guys you're connecting with and those relationships you're building now are setting you up for that marriage relationship someday. So don't just go after some guy because he's cute or because he's popular or because he's the only guy that will acknowledge your existence. Those aren't good reasons to pursue a guy. Find a godly man that's working to be a biblical leader that we're going to talk about more in a minute here. Find that guy and be pursuing and getting to know that guy, especially as you get older and look towards marriage someday. And so that's for the wives, submitting to the husband and being a partner with him as he leads the family. For the husbands, look at verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. And so for us guys, this passage actually gives us a much bigger, much more difficult task than it gives to the women. It calls us as men to a very high standard. That if we're husbands or we're going to be husbands someday, Paul says that we need to love our wives just like Jesus loved us. And it's pretty amazing how Jesus loved us. If you think about all that Jesus did for us, all that Jesus sacrificed and gave up for us, guys, we're called to love our wives like that. And so my challenge specific to you guys is, even though you're not married now, are you working to become the husband that's described here? Are you working to build that into your character now? Because if you can start to build that into your character now, that's going to help you to be a better husband someday. If you just wait till you're married and then say, oh, what was that I was supposed to be? What's a godly husband supposed to be like? All right, you're already a bunch of steps behind. But if you're actually building that character now, in your relationships with your parents, in your relationships with your friends, in your relationships with the girls around you, if you're building that character now, then that puts you a step ahead when you get married. And again, I've been married, I'm coming close to 2 years now, and marriage is hard. And if you're not prepared at least somewhat ahead of time, it's going to be even harder. And the more you can do now to develop your character, the better off that's going to make things when you're actually married. And so as we talk about these characteristics of a godly husband, these characteristics for all of us to think about in how we're leading other people, be working to build those into your character right now, so that when God gives you the opportunity to be married, you're ready and you can jump right in and start doing some good things right off the bat and not waste a lot of time messing a bunch of stuff up before you start doing stuff right. So be building that character now, guys. But for all of us, as we look at the leadership that God describes of a husband, it gives all of us a guide for some things that we should think about as we challenge ourselves to be leaders. And again, I challenge you, all of you, step up and be leaders. Whether that's being a leader next fall in Veracity, whether that's being a leader on your sport team, in your school, being a leader to your siblings and your family, if you have younger siblings, whatever it is, I challenge you, step up, be a leader. And here are 3 things from this passage that Paul tells us. Here are 3 characteristics of godly leadership. If we want to follow Jesus' example of how he loves us and how he leads us, here is how we can be loving, caring, godly leaders. First of all, godly leadership, as Jesus demonstrated it, is sacrificial. Remember, first and foremost, Jesus gave up his life for us. That he sacrificed his physical life on the cross for us. And so love and leadership is first and foremost about sacrifice. And now that I'm not saying that means that necessarily tomorrow you got to go out and take a bullet for your homie or something, like jump in front of a cough to save your grandma from COVID-19 or whatever. I'm not saying it's necessarily called to give up your physical life, but just to be sacrificial of your time and your energy and your money. Right? It may mean, rather than doing what you want to do and watching Frozen 2 for the 32nd time, right? You know your grandma needs some toilet paper, so you throw some in your book bag and you ride your bike across town and get your grandma some toilet paper. I know that's a really silly example, but hopefully you get the point there. It may mean sacrificing a little bit of what you want or what you want to do so that somebody else can be loved and cared for and have a little bit better life, a little bit better eternity, maybe. So first of all, love is sacrificial. Secondly, in that passage, we see that love and leadership seeks to make the other better. Did you catch that? All throughout that last section that we just read, it talks again and again about how Jesus wants to make us, the church, better, more godly people. That everything that Jesus does, dying on the cross, sending the Holy Spirit, giving us His Word, it's all so that we can be better and more godly people. It's not solely for Jesus' benefit. It's for us to be better people. And so as we lead, as we love, as we just look to serve other people, are we seeking to make them better people? And that might mean simply teaching them the Bible. That might mean being a godly example to someone, especially to a younger kid at church or a younger sibling, right? That might mean giving some guidance and some advice to someone, right? Are you trying to help the people around you be better people, know Jesus and follow Him more? And so we try to make other people better. And then thirdly, to be a godly leader means that we care for others' needs. That it says in that passage that we're to care for other people just like we care for our own body. Right? When you're hungry, you get yourself some food. When you're tired, you take a nap. Right? You feel and understand the needs of your physical body, and you do what you need to do to meet those physical needs. And the same thing is true as we love and lead other people, whether it's a husband with their family, or whether it's you leading in Veracity, you leading your younger siblings. We need to see the physical needs around us, and we need to do what we can to care for those needs, just like we'd meet the needs of our own physical bodies. And so are we looking, are we finding ways to care for the people around us, to meet those needs? Whether it's helping to get some food for needy people downtown, or whether it's, I don't even know, whether it's encouraging somebody who's down, somebody who's stressed out and maybe feeling lonely through this pandemic, giving them some time, talking to them on the phone, having a video chat with them on uh, Snapchat or whatever, right? Are we seeing the needs around us and doing what we can to try and meet those needs? And so again, I really want to challenge you to step up and be a leader. Right? Submit to one another. Look to how your decisions affect someone else, and what you can be doing, not just to make decisions that benefit you, but to benefit the people around you. How can you be loving and caring for others? How can you be doing that sacrificially, giving up of your time and energy and money? How can you be leading in a way that makes other people around you better? And how can you be leading in a way that sees and cares for the needs of people around you? Guys, we need biblical leaders. We need them in our world. We need them especially now in the middle of crisis. And there's people in your life that you can be that biblical leader to, that you can love and serve and care for. And so step up and do that. Not so you can have a position, not so you can have something to put on your resume someday when you go to college or a job. But the real leaders are the people that step up not because they necessarily want to be a leader, but they step up because they see people need help, people need love, people need care for, and they're willing to step up and say, I will be responsible to do that. I will be responsible to use what God has given me and help the people around me. And I challenge you, and I call you to that today and in this coming year, and throughout the fall. And we need some more student leaders in Veracity this fall. Right? JD and Joanne are going to be gone, and we need some other people to step up. And so is God opening that door and calling you even to that? And so hopefully that challenges you a little bit and gives you something to think about. Hopefully you can join us Wednesday evening at 6:30 to discuss this a little bit more, and just spend some time together on Zoom. And remember, I love you guys. I hope you're doing well. Continuing to pray for your health and safety, and praying that we'll be back together in person again soon. See you guys later.